What is up, guys? Welcome back to my channel, and today I have kind of a different video from my old content. I'm going to be giving you a tour of my handheld consoles, mostly Nintendo, but there is a little bit of PlayStation there as well. I thought this would be a great kind of casual video to get back into posting on YouTube, especially after I've been gone for so long. So with that out of the way, let's go ahead and move on to the consoles. So to start off with, we have the Game Boy DMG. I'm going to be going in release order of when the consoles were released, at least for the Nintendo ones. And this is certainly a console. I mean, like, the Game Boy took the world by storm. It's what made handheld gaming what it is, etc., etc. But when I look at this, I don't really believe that, if that makes any sense. It kind of sucks. Screen's horrible. It has this, like, P filter on it, because everything's green. It's a horrible size. It takes 4 AA batteries. Like, this thing's a battery hog. But it was cheap for its time, so I understand what it did. But yeah, it's certainly a console. I didn't get this for the best... in the best condition. It's got like a scrape or two on the bottom. Oh, and I'm not holding it in the camera. Yeah, you can't even see it, but oh well. Anyways, not in the greatest condition, but I got it for like $70, so I can't really complain that much. But definitely not something I would recommend to someone who just wants to play Game Boy games. Don't get the DMG. It's not worth it. Moving on though, we have a console that actually kind of is worth it if you want that original Game Boy experience, which is the Game Boy Pocket. And this was the next revision from the Game Boy DMG. And when you look at these like side by side, it's insane how much they were able to accomplish in such a short time from when the DMG released to when the Game Boy Pocket released. When people say like, oh, the Game Boy is what caused handheld gaming to be the way it is, when I look at this console, I believe it. This thing is so small, it's so pocketable, it's got this like adorable boxy sort of build to it. I love the red color that I got. And I got this in great condition. I think I only spent like $60 for it. Which maybe there's someone out there saying, oh, I got mine for $30, but $60 I think is not that bad. It's a pretty average price as far as these consoles go for. So if you don't care about Game Boy Color games and you are fine playing in like bright lighting, this is kind of not a bad console to get at all, actually, as far as the Game Boys go. But moving on, we have the penultimate Game Boy, aside from the Game Boy Light, which I don't have yet because it's a Japan exclusive. We have the Game Boy Color. And this Game Boy Color is one of the only consoles in my collection that was like a childhood console for me. I got it from my aunt when I was like about like 8 years old, and it came with one game, which was A Bug's Life. And for a long time, that was the only game I had, so I played that game all the time. I was on planes, car rides, etc., etc. Until finally I was like, oh, I can buy myself more games, right? So I started going to the swap meet and buying games from retro stores, etc., etc., and that's kind of what led me down the path that I have right here. So a lot of the games that I played as a kid were on this Game Boy. Like the first Pokemon game that I ever actually beat was Pokemon Yellow, of all games, on here, which makes me sound really, really old, but I'm not old. The game was super old when I got it. This Game Boy was super old when I got it, okay? But there was Pokemon Yellow. I beat Legend of Zelda Link's Awakening Deluxe. There's the Legend of Zelda Oracle of Seasons, Oracle of Ages. There's just a great catalog on the Game Boy Color. So for a long time, I wanted to mod this one in order to make it a little bit more playable, because it kind of suck. You have to play only in certain types of lighting. The colors are not very, very like prominent or vivid. But I didn't want to mod it because this is like my childhood console, and it felt wrong to kind of, you know, butcher it and take it apart in order to do that. So instead, I bought the next console on my list, which is an FPGA console. This is the Funny Playing GBC, which basically, if you don't know what an FPGA is, it's hardware emulation, right? It's a motherboard that is pretending to be the same motherboard as the original Game Boy Color. So with this one, I bought this one and I bought like a very cheap $10 flash cart off of AliExpress. So I've started to play on there. Particularly, I have, if the game will boot on, I've been playing Metal Gear Solid on here. And honestly, this game is peak for the console that it's on. It's like a full Metal Gear experience. I can't even complain. But anyways, if you're worried about like, if you want to play on original hardware, which is something that I've been trying to do, I've been trying to play a lot on original hardware. This is definitely as close as you can get without buying and modding your own Game Boy Color. Like if you just look at them side by side, they're essentially the same, aside from minute differences like on the screen bezel. It does say Nintendo here, but the glare you can't really see it because of the white case. From the back, they're almost the same actually. Let me line them up so there's yeah, it's basically the same thing. The parts are interchangeable. The thing is, also, if you are looking to get into modding retro handhelds, I think that this FPGA is a good place to start because it is something that you have to build yourself, right? The kit comes with the screen and the battery and the shell, but you have to source your own buttons, which was not hard at all. You can just buy them off Amazon, and then you have to assemble the whole thing yourself. I would 100% recommend doing that if this is something that you want to like get into, or at least are thinking about getting into, because it's relatively affordable. This is $80 for the whole, well, $80 for the kit, and then like I think like $10 for buttons, and that's just because I bought them next day off of Amazon. You could get them for way cheaper. But anyways, it's a relatively affordable like point of entry, and it's just so great. I mean, it's not flawless compared to, I think the Analog Pocket is probably way better. I've never touched the Analog Pocket. But for my purposes, it gets the job done. It's a Game Boy Color that plays all of my cartridges with a much better screen and much better build quality and USB Type-C charging. So with that, that's all of the Game Boys, at least for the original Game Boy line, and then we're going to move right on into the Game Boy Advance. Okay, so the Game Boy Advance is an interesting console for me, because as a kid I played mostly Game Boy Advance games, as odd as that sounds, despite not owning a Game Boy Advance, and that's mostly because of two reasons, right? I had a DS Lite as a kid, which I don't currently have in this collection anymore, and I'll get to that later, but also I emulated a lot of Game Boy Advance games on my my iPod 4th gen from when I was like 11 or 12, 10, no, not even 11, I think I was like 10 when I had that. So I played a lot of Game Boy Advance games and never thought that I was actually going to own a Game Boy Advance to play them on. I thought I was only ever going to get to play them on emulators. So when I first got my first Game Boy Advance, it was a really big moment for me to be able to play these games on original hardware that I had already been playing for so long on emulators or emulator handhelds, which I have a couple of them in this collection as well. So this is kind of a console that was really formative for me as a kid, despite the fact that I never owned one. So with that sort of preamble out of the way, the first console we have here is my Game Boy Advance that I have modded myself. This came originally in a pretty scuffed up white, white shell, and then I replaced the shell with this Glacier Blue one from Extreme Rate, which you'll be able to see on the back right here. So, oh, the glare is pretty bad. Extreme Rate. And I replaced that. I replaced the buttons are original. I replaced the screen, of course, with an IPS screen, which has all sorts of like color filters, etc., etc. And then, of course, currently inside of it is a Easy Flash flash cart for games. I have a lot of actual games that I do have the physical cartridges for as well. But most of these are I don't want to carry cartridges around, so that's why I have the Easy Flash. I have all the games that I have on my physical cartridges on my Easy Flash, so I can just have one thing and bring it with me all the time. But I've played quite a few games on here. I played through my cartridge of Mario and Luigi. Is that Superstar Saga? Whatever the first one is, the Mario and Luigi that came out for the Game Boy Advance. I played through that on here. I love the form factor of the original Game Boy Advance. If the original screen didn't suck so bad, this would probably be the best Game Boy in my opinion, because it has an actual headphone jack. You can buy rechargeable batteries, which are what I have in there. It's just so comfortable and compact to play on. I love it so much. I do plan on doing a little bit more work to it. I'm going to get some white buttons that are coming in later in order to make it match with the screen bezel, and also so that the sides are white instead of the Glacier Blue right here. But other than that, this is a great console. If you are willing to mod a console and you only want one Game Boy Advance to have, I think this is honestly not a bad spot to start. Now, keep in mind the caveat of you have to mod it. This is not a console that I think is playable in 2025 without modding it, just because of how horrible the the screen quality is. Like, it's bad, even just for like Game Boy Advance standards, because the other Game Boys that come after that are playable. This one is just not playable otherwise, aside from modding. So moving on from there, we have the AGS, this is the AGS 001 Game Boy Advance. So touching the button only turns off the light. But even with the backlight, the front light off, this is still a much more viewable screen than the base screen is on the normal Game Boy Advance. I don't have a way of showing that because I don't have one that isn't modded. But if you needed just a Game Boy, right, in general, like aside from just a Game Boy to play Game Boy games, but like a Game Boy to play Game Boy Advance and Game Boy games, and you want the cheapest entry option possible, not a bad pick. The AGS 001 is not bad because it is playable with that front lighting. The main issue I have with it is kind of my fault. I'm not a big fan of the screen, of course, because it's not as good as a modded screen or the AGS 101. But also, I reshelled this. It came originally in a very beat red shell, So I replaced it with this. This is pearl white. It might look silver on camera, but this is a pearl white shell. And it's horrible quality. I mean, I should have expected that. I only spent like $12 on the shell, but the hinge has this weird creak. I don't know if it'll pick up over the mic, but I don't like that. I don't like that creaking noise. If I bend the screen at a certain angle, actually, it's not going to do it for me now. But if I bend the screen at a certain angle, there will be issues with the ribbon cables. That's the word I'm looking for. Ribbon cable getting pinched, and then the screen will look weird. So this is all my fault. That's why I don't use this one. But I do hold on to it because I wanted an AGS 101 to have in my collection, or sorry, 001 to have in my collection. So it did get a little bit of playing on here. I played Fire Emblem 7 on here, but it's just not perfect. The other reason that I actually don't prefer this one to the original Game Boy, if you're willing to mod it, is that this has a headphone jack and this one does not. There's adapters. I do have an adapter that allows you to put a headphone jack in the charging port, but I shouldn't have to do that. I feel like there just should be a headphone jack on here. And if I was willing to do more modding to add that, it probably would be my favorite console to use at all. But I just can't get myself to do that because it requires a lot more work than I feel like doing at the moment. Anyways, moving on from there, we have another AGS 101. 001. However, this one is heavily modded. So this is one of my favorite consoles I have in my collection just because of how much work I put into it. This is a AGS 001 that I've modified to have a Pokédex aesthetic shell on here. This is also from Extreme Rate, like the Game Boy Advance shell here. And it just looks so good, in my opinion. There's one issue. There was one painting defect down there. You can kind of see that little white right there. That bothers me, but other than that, perfectly fine. It also has a IPS screen in there. Ooh, there we go. Now you can kind of see it. IPS screen in there, like my modded Game Boy Advance, original Game Boy Advance. So this is the one that I mostly play on, just because I built it myself. So it feels really good to be able to take this thing around. And when people see it, they're like, "Oh my god, I've never seen a Game Boy Advance that looks like that." And I'm like, "Well, you probably won't, unless you find someone else that also happens to use the same shell." So that's something that makes me feel really special. Also, side note, this shell is kind of incredible. It's really well made. It doesn't have any of the problems that I have with that super cheap shell that I mentioned earlier, but it also comes with multiple sets of buttons. So we have these white buttons that I have up here, and then you also have these blue accents right here. Those blue accents also came with it. It came with black, white, and blue buttons, which I just think is awesome. So you have all these like color combinations, and you can do, like I did this little offset. I picked a specific specific Pokédex that I mimicked here. But it's just cool that you can do that. I really think that this is an awesome shell if you're looking to do this yourself, to mod a Game Boy Advance. Moving on to another Game Boy Advance that I reshelled. This one is an AGS 101, actually. So this is what the official backlit screen looks like. And if you can find an AGS 101, oh, you should do it. It's the best Game Boy Advance, honestly, without modding. If you're not going to mod it, if you can get one of these with the backlit screen. Obviously, there's no headphone jack, but just get an adapter. It's so incredible, and this is the one that got a lot of use for a very long time up until I built this one here, because it's just such a joy to play on. You even with that's on the low backlight, so this, on the high backlight you can't even see it because my camera doesn't want to pick it up. And then of course I reshelled it into this Rayquaza shell here, and this is a much better quality shell than the one that I used for this white one here. And I know there's a lot of debate on reshelling, especially reshelling into official Nintendo console variations. For me, it's not like I'm trying to scam anyone. I'm not going to sell this to someone and be like, "Oh, it's an official Rayquaza SP," because for one, the Rayquaza SP didn't even come in AGS 101 form factor. I think that was only the AGS 001. And for two, I'm not that type of guy. I reshelled this one solely for my own benefit, just because I think it looks cooler on my shelf, and I think it looks cooler to use in this green colorway with the Rayquaza on it, because I like Pokemon. So that's my feeling on reshelling. I know a lot of people are debate on that, versus like reshelling into something like this, which is very obviously a reshell. Last but not least, well, kind of least because it's the smallest, we have the Game Boy Micro. And this is such an interesting console. This is one of the last Game Boys that I got because it took me a long time to hunt one down that was kind of cheap. I think I only spent like $140 on it. Oh, I didn't even go over the prices. This was like $50 or like $70. This one was like, I think like $89 before I reshelled it, and then same thing. This was like $70 before I did a lot of work to it. But this cost me like $120 because the Game Boy Micro was made in such small supply because no one bought it. Because it came out at the same time as the Nintendo DS, and it doesn't play Game Boy games. It only plays Game Boy Advance. in spite of that, I think this is kind of the best Game Boy Advance. I know that I said that the original Game Boy Advance, if you're willing to mod it, is the best one. And I know I said this is the best one if you're not willing to mod it. I take all that back, actually. The Game Boy Micro is the best Game Boy Advance for solely Game Boy Advance games without modding. Just because it's so compact, it has a headphone jack, it's made out of like full aluminum metal construction, so it's like super robust if you're throwing this in your pocket. And the screen is incredible. I mean, it's small. It's super small compared to any of the other Game Boy Advances. But this is a portable system that you're playing games that don't really need a lot of screen real estate anyways. And it kind of look better for the pixel density when they're all cramped, like in this small screen here. And you might think like, oh, how do I read certain text or whatever on there? It works perfectly fine. I played Pokemon Unbound, a ROM hack, on here mostly, and it was an awesome experience. So if you can manage to get one of these for a decent price, I would recommend it. The issue is that getting a decent price. They're usually run for like from $120 to like $150, almost $200, depending on like $120 to $150 is good. If you can find it in the $120 to $150 range, you should buy it. They're usually sold for like $200 or more because there's just not that a lot of them. I managed to get mine from AliExpress of all places, so it might be refurbished or something, and I don't know. But honestly, I don't care. It works perfectly fine. And that's the thing that you'll know, actually. None of the consoles that I've showed so far were from AliExpress, but the ones I'm going to show later, some of them are from AliExpress. So when we move on to the not this next bit, but when we move on to the 3DSs, I'll talk a little bit about buying off of AliExpress. So with that, that's all of my Game Boy Advances, but next we're going to move into the DS line, which of course can play Game Boy Advance games. And there's quite a lot in that collection, especially my 3DS collection too after that. So moving on, we have the DS line. My cat's tail is right here. We'll start with the original DS, which kind of sucks. I know I said that about a couple consoles in here, but I don't like the original DS. This is the Mew Poké Center edition. It is a reshell. I did not buy it this way. I made it this way. I bought an original silver one and then reshelled it. Which that's something I'm going to, like I said, I'm going to tell you guys when I reshell something, because obviously I don't have the money to shell out for an actual original Mew DS. But anyways, this thing has like a really weird build quality. The hinge is super flimsy. I don't know if my mic is picking it up, but it creaks a lot. And that's not from the shell that I put it into. That's just kind of how it was beforehand. The screens are not as good as the DS Lite screens that come later. But what I do like about it is I kind of like the layout that we have here. I like the ergonomics of it. It's very comfortable. It's much bigger than the DS Lite. The buttons are weird. I don't like that they're these flat, clicky buttons. I'd much rather the buttons that we get later with the DS Lite. But there's kind of just no reason to buy this one. The really only benefit of this original DS is that Game Boy Advance games fully fit in the slot down here, and they don't stick out like they do in the DS Lite that comes later. But other than that, if you want something to play DS games, just buy literally any other DS. This is mostly just for, like I said, to have all of the DSs. I do think that there is something to be said about this kind of design language. I do like this. I like the idea that they had here. I just don't think it was well executed, just from the sake of the kind of shaky build quality, as well as the just the fact that it feels cheap, especially compared to the DS Lite, which is crazy to say because the DS Lite also is a very flimsy device. So moving on to the DS Lite, this is a DS Lite that is not my childhood DS Lite, but looks like my childhood DS Lite. When I was a kid, I had a blue DS Lite that I played Heart Gold, Soul Silver on, and I played Diamond and Pearl on. I never beat either of those games, but I did have them. But it got stolen when I was a kid from my dad's work. So I lost that DS for a very long time, and until I got a 3DS later on, I just didn't have like a handheld for a long time. So one of the first things I did when I actually got back into collecting was I bought myself a DS Lite, and this one I think only cost me like $60, and it was pretty cheap. I think I would say $60 is pretty cheap. That kind of seems to be the average on the consoles that I've bought. That's because I keep trying to find like really good deals. You can find them for much more expensive or much cheaper than that, depending on if you're lucky or unlucky. But everything that I said about the original DS kind of doesn't apply here. This has a much better backlit screen, so it's much better backlit because my camera doesn't want to pick it up. The hinge is a lot better, even though the hinge does break on these. That is kind of the main problem with them. It is a lot smaller, but I think that that's good because it's easy to fit in my pocket. It's a lot more compact. It feels more solid than the original DS, although it does still feel like a little bit like a toy, like it might break. This is not my only DS Lite that I have, actually. This is one that's gotten the most playtime. This one has gone out with me a lot, and I've played a lot of games on here. Castlevania, notably. some Pokemon as well. I do want to play Layton, Professor Layton. Not on here, actually. I think I'm going to play that on my DSi XL later on. But from there, we have my other DS Lite, which is the Final Fantasy Revenant Wings DS Lite. And I bought this one on accident. This is a gorgeous console, by the way. It's all white everywhere, front and back. It's a little yellowed on these little rubber parts here and there, but not really that bad. The screens are also a little yellowed, but you can't really tell on camera. And that is because this console is Japanese. So I bought it on eBay from an auction, and it was like $50. And I was like, oh, I'll put 55 as a max bid. Probably not going to win it. And I did. So I bought this for cheaper than my normal blue DS Lite. And as you can see, it has the Japanese text there because it is Japanese. And then there's Japanese on the back as well. And I don't really have a ton to say about this one. I bought it mostly on accident, and I haven't gotten rid of it because it's a cool special edition console. Why would I get rid of it? It's gorgeous. I love the white. I love the white DS Lites. And I like white consoles in general, as you'll see a little bit later. Yeah, that's really all that I can say about this one. I do want to play Final Fantasy Revenant Wings, just because I have this, and I don't really play a lot of Final Fantasy. So that you'll see that's also a trend. I'll buy a console and be like, oh, I got to play the game that the console is based on. So that's my DS Lites. Onto my DSi. This DSi has been through hell with me. I bought it, I think, like right when I started college in 2021. And you can see it's got these scrapes on here and whatever. And that's because it's been sitting in my pocket at work. I've played through games while I was on break at work or on lunch at work. And this was the console that did it for me. Lots of Castlevania, Pokemon. I'm trying to think of what else. Fire Emblem. What Fire Emblem did I play? I think I played Shadow Dragon on here, actually. Advance Wars. I did play Advance Wars on here. This one is modded. Oh, Chrono Trigger. This is the console I beat Chrono Trigger on. This console's modded, so I don't need to have like a R4 card or use cartridges or anything like that. And I would 100% recommend doing that, actually. If you have a DSi, it's super easy, and it just makes it a lot less headache. All you need is the console. You don't need anything else to be able to play games. And then also, so I could put this Black and White 2 theme on it, because Black and White 2 is my favorite Pokemon game ever. But yeah, this console has been through hell with me. I love this DSi, particularly this black one. And I love the DSi in general, just because of the aesthetics of it. It's so clean. Like, I pull out this device. When I pull out a normal DS, like I said, it's a little bit like a toy. It has this kind of cheap plastic. It feels like it's going to break on me eventually. Whereas the DSi is made so solid that, like, I pull this out. For one, it doesn't feel like I'm pulling out a toy. Like, I don't feel like I pull this out and people are, like, going to look at me strange. This looks like a adult's device, right? And it has this camera on here. Other way. Camera on here. I love these early 2000s, like, design cues that it was taking. Early 2000s. Early 2010s, sorry. Design cues that are going into this DSi right here. But yeah, that's all I can really say about it. This was my main workhorse. It is still my main workhorse. If I'm going out and I need to have, like, a DS on me or something, I'm taking this one. However, it's not my only DSi. This is the Pokemon White DSi. I gotta move it so that you can actually see what's on it. But God, this thing is so gorgeous. Like I said, I love all white consoles. This one I think I only got for like $90. It was really cheap for what it is. I think these usually go for like $150. It is not in perfect condition. It's missing one of those rubber spots. It's a little yellowed there. It's yellowed on the rubber on the front part. The stylus, you can't really see it from the light. The stylus is super yellowed. And the screens are not super yellowed, but they're a little yellowed. Because it's Japanese, of course. I actually haven't played anything on here. This has mostly just been a grail that I've wanted to have in my collection and be able to see on my shelf where I display all my handhelds. But I'm just so happy I got this. I never thought I would be able to have it. For a little bit, I had the Pokemon Black DSi as well, but I bought that one to give it as a gift to a friend, so I don't have it anymore. But I will eventually want to buy another one so that I can have the match set of the Pokemon Black and the Pokemon White DSis. Another thing about Japanese consoles, actually, I'll mention that while I have both of these here, which both happen to be white consoles. The screens turn yellow in Japan because of the humidity, right? The great news about that is that if you're in a part of the US which is not as humid, those screens will unyellow. So these screens were much more yellow when I first bought them, but they have since become much less yellow just over time and from use. There's a video someone put out too of them just leaving it on a white screen and then it unyellowed itself. So if you're afraid of purchasing a Japanese console because you're like, oh, it's going to be yellow, don't worry. It will stop being yellow after you use it for a little bit. So moving on, this is the only DSi XL I have. This is one of the only consoles where I only have, I have duplicates of the DS Lite, duplicates of the DSi, but I only have one original DS. and one original, or in one DSi XL. So the great thing about this one is I bought this one in the box. So actually, let me go ahead and grab that box real quick. So this is the box, and once again, this was $60. I paid $60 for everything in box. The stylus, pen, like the ink, it's on the front here. This like pen stylus thing is in the box. Obviously, I'm not gonna take it out because people lose that a lot for these consoles. And it's just that was like that shocked me because I bought this off of Amazon, of all places. I bought it off Amazon Japan. Don't get me wrong, but I did not expect it to come in the box and in pristine condition. This thing has, like, aside from the smudges that I've put on it with my fingers, there's nothing wrong with it. And this console is like my at-home DS console. I don't take this out with me, just because of the condition that it's in. It's just so nice. So if I want to play, also like the bigger screens are really helpful for if I want to play something like, usually like not graphic novels, like visual novels. That's what I'm looking for. Like if I'm playing like Ace Attorney or something, it's gonna be on there just because I think it looks better with the bigger screen. Most other games, I actually really don't think that you need the bigger screen. It doesn't really affect much just because it's pixel art, and there's usually not a ton of text. But that aside, this console is great, honestly. The DSi XL, I understand why people say it's the definitive one, right? Because it plays every game in this much bigger screen size. Although, when people talk about the pixel density, it is noticeable. If you're playing, like I did start playing a little bit of Order of Ecclesia, Castlevania Order of Ecclesia on there, and you could very much see how large the pixels were, because of this bigger screen size. But even so, I understand why people are saying when they're like, oh, like, especially if my eyes were bad. My eyes are great, but if they were bad, I'd understand, like, oh, I want the bigger DSi because I can't see on, like, the normal DS Lite or the small DSi. Like, I understand what people are saying. For me, the definitive DSi, or definitive DS, is still the DS Lite, just because it has all of the features. But I do have to kind of take that back because the normal DSi has has everything except for GBA, and then it also has like DSiWare and etc. stuff like that. Like there is stuff that you're missing with the DSi or DS Lite. But if I only had to buy one, it would be the DS Lite. So with that, that's all of my DS consoles. But we're gonna move on to my 3DS consoles, which is where it's gonna get a little bit more interesting, I think. Okay, so this is probably gonna be the longest section of this video. The 3DS was a really that console came out. I think I got mine when I was probably like 12 or 13. Whenever Fire Emblem Awakening came out, that's when I got my 3DS, or maybe slightly before that. But I played so much on the 3DS. It was like this the console that made me really get into Nintendo and continue to be a nerd as I am now. That's the first console that I modded, software modded as a kid. Although I did jailbreak my phones all the time before that, so I wasn't like super not used to modding software like that. But anyways, it's also what led me into collecting the way that I am in the first place, because I had two 3DS XLs as a kid. My first one I don't have anymore, and I damaged it. I damaged the screen. I ended up fixing the screen and then selling it later on. But my second one I purchased because of that first one being damaged, and I thought I lost it when I left for college. Couldn't find it anywhere. Was completely really sad about it. I was like, whatever. I still have all these games that I want to play that I own, so I'm gonna buy a 2DS from GameStop. So I did do that, and then I bought the 2DS, and after playing on it for a little bit, I put a couple games on it, and I was like, I kind of wish that it folded. I kind of wish it was like the DS that I had before. So then I was like, well, I don't really care about the 3D. I'll see what I can do to get the best one that's cheap. So I bought a 2DS XL, which at the time was like $150. They're way more expensive now. By the time it was like $150, and I bought that, and I was like, wow, this is great. And then later on, I was like, I kind of don't like this form factor. I think it kind of looks like a phone, and I want it to look more like a DS, and I kind of miss the 3D. And then that just let me downhill of buying another. Well, actually, before that, I ended up finding my 3DS XL actually, and then I found it. It's like, oh, perfect. Well, now I have most of the line already. Well, I'll buy all of the 3DS line. And then after that, I was like, well, let's buy all of the Game Boys. And I was like, well, I've already done that. Might as well buy all the DSs too. And then that led me to well, I got to buy every single Nintendo console now. So then here we are. That's where I am with this collection. So with that aside, this is a original 3DS. This is the Dragon Quest edition. It's Japanese as well. This might be a reshell. I don't know, because this is one of the consoles that I purchased off of AliExpress. And a lot of those on there are reshells. So this could be, the thing that makes me think it might be a reshell is that it's missing, oh my god, my camera. You can't really see it, but it's missing the sticker that should be right here, with the serial number on it. Even if it is a reshell, I don't really care. I mostly bought it because I wanted a 3DS, and because I liked this color. I like the white with the blue and the silver. So this console will be my Dragon Quest console. It's modded. They are all modded. But I haven't gotten around to playing them yet because I already played a decent bit of JRPGs as is, and I haven't been able to find myself to like get the time to sit down and play these two games, even though I have heard that they are incredible, so I will get to those later. But about the 3DS in general, it's so well built. This thing's a tank. You can see like the metal right there. It's got this super thick plastic, which is part of why I don't think this might be a reshell, just because of the quality of the shell that's on it. But like I could drop this thing and not really worry about it breaking or anything like that. The issue with it is that because of it being so well built, they gave these like sharp corners on the edge here that when you're holding onto it, dig into your hand after a certain amount of time. It's also pretty small, so you kind of have to hold it like a little cramped, which is going to dig into your hands. So after a certain while, you're kind of going to get tired of holding it for longer playing sessions, so it's not ideal for that. But I do love how small it is. This is the smallest of the 3DS line, and something about that compactness is just really charming to me, especially when it's in this like cool little cutesy Dragon Quest shell that I have here. But anyways, that's the 3DS. So moving on, we're going to go to the 3DS XL, which is my childhood 3DS XL, and has its own story to it because it's a little ugly. It's a little scuffed looking. So from the front, it looks great. It looks like it's the Persona Q2 limited edition, which I do want. That is a grail of mine. But from the back, what is that? Is that the Legend of Zelda backing? And then, oh wait, what is the color of that SD slot? So I kind of messed up a lot on this console, and that's because originally it was blue. It was originally just like a blue 3DS, and that got super scraped up, super scratched, because I bought it used after I damaged my original black one. So it was already scratched from the owner before me. It's like, oh, well, I'll give it a little bit of a revamp, and I bought what I thought was a full shell of the Persona Q2 one, but it was only the top. So after that, I was like, well, shoot, I'll make sure to actually buy a full reshell next time of the top and bottom shell, or top and back shell. And I did that for the Legend of Zelda, what is that, Link Between Worlds Special Edition. But then I forgot that this SD slot is not going to be the right color, so then that also made it look a little scuffed. So I gave up, and I was like, I'm gonna put this one on the front because I really like the way that looks, and I'm just gonna leave this on my shelf because I don't need to play it that much anymore because I have other consoles that are better, other 3DSs that are better. So it doesn't get a ton of play anymore, but this was my main playing console for a very, very long time because it was the only 3DS that I had for a very, very long time. And I really love it. I love the 3DS XL. This is the game I first played through Pokemon Black 2 on because I didn't have a normal DS at the time. I played Pokemon Sun and Moon on here. I played Fire Emblem Awakening, Fire Emblem Fates on here. I played Ace Attorney Trilogy and Ace Attorney, the second Ace Attorney Trilogy on here as well. Let me think. What else did I play on here? Persona Q and Persona Q2 were on this console here. So yeah, this console got a lot of love, even though it doesn't get a lot of playing from me anymore. Of course, I'm going to continue to hold on to it forever because this is my childhood 3DS XL, even if it's not the console that I play on the most now. So moving on to the console that I do... Oh, actually, before I do that, let's talk about... This is the 2DS in question that I purchased when I thought I lost my 3DS XL. On the back, we have Shao, because I used to play a lot of Genshin Impact. And this... I love this color. It's such a charming... I think it's called, like, Seafoam... Like, green... Seafoam green, or... It's sea glass green, something like that. But it's just gorgeous. I have this Legend of Zelda theme on here. I bumped my mic right there. Legend of Zelda theme on here that matches perfectly. And I played through Pokemon Y, or maybe Pokemon X on here. And I played through a good bit of Fire Emblem Echoes on here before I transferred it over to my 2DS XL, which I'll talk about later. This is a super comfortable console, don't get me wrong. I'm not a big fan of the wedge shape, because when I bring this out, I feel like I'm bringing out like a kid's toy, especially because the coloring doesn't help. That's part of why I wanted to get a different console in the first place. But if you're trying to get in for the cheapest possible like 3DS experience, it's great because I bought it for like $90. You probably will get it for like around $100 nowadays. But it does everything that a normal 3DS would do. It doesn't have any of the extra features, right? No 3D, doesn't fold, and nothing like that. But it is built for kids, so you don't have to worry about it breaking. It's super, super ergonomic in your hands. I do love this console, even though it's not my favorite. So with that out of the way, that's the original 3DS line done, right? So we're going to move on to the new 3DS. This is the console that gets the most use for me right here. This is the new 3DS, just the standard one. And I currently have a Legend of Zelda Wind Waker theme on here. This console is just awesome because not only does it have everything from the normal 3DS, right, which it can play GBA games natively, you can play your DS cartridges, you can play your 3DS cartridges, you can mod it and get all sorts of emulators and whatever on it. It also has just better, a better CPU and a second stick. Let me hold it this way. I modded it so you can't really see right there, but this is a white PSP stick instead of the normal slider, and that just adds so much. It's so much more control. It makes it feel like a real stick instead of the little nub that it starts with that I'm not a big fan of. But I've been playing through so many games on here. Fantasy Life. I played a lot of rhythm games on here. Theorhythm, Final Fantasy. What else is on here? Taiko. This is Japanese. Taiko is Japanese. Let's see. Was there anything else that I played on here recently? Those are games I can think of off the top of my head. I think I played something else on here that I can't find right here. Oh! Nope, I played that on a different console. Well, actually, we'll talk about that later. Ultra Sun and Ultra Moon, actually. Ultra Moon I started playing on here as well. But the other thing that's great about this is that, okay, I love the size. It's compact. It's slightly bigger than the original 3DS, but not by much. So the screen size is a little bigger, which is awesome. But not so big that it makes it feel like it's more bulky to bring around like something like the original 3DS XL. But it also has these swappable faceplates. So you can buy other faceplates and swap them out. I have a lot that I bought off of AliExpress. I have the Pokemon Blue ones. I have the Pokemon Alpha Sapphire. I have some Legend of Zelda ones that are white and gold that I have on here. Right now I just have the basic white ones on here. But that feature is just so awesome, which is part of why I wanted this console for so long. And I'm really glad that I have it. It's also, like I said, it's just super compact. Oh, that's what I played a lot on here, actually, is Mario CGP 7, which is modded Mario Kart. If you have a modded 3DS, 100% recommend it. You should be playing that game. So if I had to buy one 3DS console, it'd be this one. It's the perfect size for me. It has all those extra features that I mentioned. It has the swappable faceplates, and it's just a gorgeous console. They only came in black and white, unfortunately, but this white one is just beautiful. So moving on from there, we have the only damaged console that I'm going to show. I have a couple consoles that I've broken myself, but this is not one that I broke myself. So this is a 3DS XL. Solgaleo and Lunala edition. This is definitely a reshell. I bought it off of AliExpress. And the story with this one was that it was pre-modded when I bought it. I did not mod this one myself, which is why it broke. Because whatever they did something wrong on there. So it won't boot anymore. It has all these Luma error codes. And so I tried to fix it. I replaced I'm not going to go into all the technical things, but I replaced the boot.firm. I replaced a lot of things on here and did every possible software fix that I could do. And then I tried to replace the SD card because I thought it was an SD card issue, and then I tried to replace the SD card reader. Didn't work. But then I found that just holding on to where the SD card is, like the SD card slot is, and then booting it made it boot fine. But whenever I would let go, it would break. So I just gave up on it. So this is a graveyard console, but it still does get displayed because it's part of the full collection for all of the handhelds going through. So anyways, from there, we have the 2DS XL that I mentioned earlier. This is a purple and silver 2DS XL. And I modded it myself. Of course, it has a Espeon theme on here, which is gorgeous. And this console is really, really beautiful to me, honestly. I didn't like it that much when I first bought it, just because, like I said, the shape is a little different from a normal DS. And since then, it's really grown on me, especially when I modded it and replaced this stick right here with a gray PSP stick. I think that it just looks much better, having that big old stick there. And it makes games play a lot better. This console got a lot of use as well, actually. I finished Fire Emblem Echoes on here. I played I played Resident Evil Revelations on here. I played the start of Kirby Triple Deluxe on here before I moved that over to the 3DS, the new 3DS. Let me see what else I have on here. I've played a good bit of Mario Kart here. I don't think I've played any Pokemon games on here, actually, surprisingly. This might be the only console I have never played a Pokemon game on. But this console's main use now is just games that have two sticks. Like, if it's a shooter or something like that, that's normally what I use this for. Because for some reason, it just feels right on here. The screen size feels right, having the extra stick there feels right, and this doesn't really feel like a, quote, Nintendo console for me. So games that don't feel like Nintendo games are usually what I play on here. This is not my only 2DS XL, though, actually. This is my second 2DS, or, well, this is the first one I bought. But this is my main player for 3DS games and whatnot. This is one that I bring with me because I'm not too worried about it because I have a duplicate. And the duplicate is right here. This is one of my grails, this Pokeball 2DS XL. And I bought this also off AliExpress for $200 of all things. It was super cheap. It currently has my copy of Ultra Moon in there. This is what I played Alpha Sapphire on as well. I played a little bit of rhythm games on here as well. But this console is just so gorgeous. It has a Persona 5 theme on it right now to match with the color scheme. But it's just it's just so tasteful. The top, the black and red, and inside with the gray offset here. This is just such a beautiful console, and it's a console that I wanted for so long, and I'm just so glad I have it. So obviously this doesn't really leave the house with me. This stays at home. I do play games on it, but I play it at home. And I just, oh god, it's my favorite. So that's all of the 3DSs, but we're not done actually. I do have a Switch Lite, which, I mean, who cares about the Switch? Honestly, we're about to get the Switch too. I'll just tell you it's a green Switch Lite, and then I also have a launch edition Switch as well, not the OLED or anything like that, which I do have modded. However, I also own some Sony consoles, so that's what we're going to go into next. So the PSP is kind of a weird console for me because I never owned one as a kid, and I didn't know anyone who owned one as a kid. So I didn't really know any of the games that were on there. I spent most of my childhood as just being a Nintendo-only person, but because that's what my parents would buy me, and then later on that's what I would buy myself. So I wasn't really used to, I didn't really know any of the like PSP franchises or anything like that. So I was really interested in picking one up and starting to play on it. So I happened to stumble upon one in a book off one time, and it was like $90, which I way overpaid in retrospect. But I ended up buying it, and that was this PSP right here. This is a PSP 1000 model, as you can tell from the serial sticker that you can't see because my camera's out of focus, as well as just the bulk of it. You can see, like, look at this bulky battery section. This charging adapter right there, as well as the fact that to open up the UMD door, you have to hit this little switch that pops it open. So this is a very interesting console for the rest of the line because the rest of the line does not follow the design language of this at all. But this was the first one I bought, and then I found out it was the worst one. The screen is not as good. The battery is bigger actually and does last longer, but the screen's not as good. It's much heavier. It's much bulkier. But at least when I was reading all this, these were all things that were listed as negatives. But now that I have all of them, this is a great console. It's built like it's the same thing with the 3DS because it was the first one. It's built like a tank, super heavy. It doesn't feel like it's gonna break. It doesn't feel like a toy. And it has, like I said, it has like some interesting things about it, like the push button release on the UMD door, or the fact that the Wi-Fi switch is down here instead of on top. Just a lot of there's an IR blaster on here. There's a lot of really interesting things about the PSP 1000. So honestly, I don't really see. I'm not going to be the type of person to say you need to buy a 2000 or 3000. I think this PSP 1000 is great. This is what I started playing on. I started playing God of War Chains of Olympus on here. I did end up finishing that on my PSP 2000 later on because I moved the files over. But yeah, this is a great console, especially if you can buy it for pretty cheap. You can get these for like $45, maybe a little bit more, especially the PSP 1000s because there are a ton of them. And then you mod it and you have all these games on here. So I would say that any one of these will serve you fine. This is not like the 3DS or DS lines, or even the Game Boy Advance lines, where they're all drastically different, and it's like, oh, this one's way better for this reason, and this one's, it's not like that at all, in my opinion. The only real difference between these all is the screen size. That's basically it. So moving on, or not screen size, sorry, screen quality, the color and the lighting. So moving on, we have my PSP 2000, which I am going to do a screen swap on this later. There will probably be a video posted on that after I've completed it. But this one I got for $40 from from eBay. It's Japanese, so I did have to mod it, so it would start running my USA games. It's got some damage on the side right there. Had to replace the battery cover because the one that it came with was damaged. It also didn't have a battery. But it's very different from the PSP 1000, which you can see if you put them side by side. It's much thinner. It doesn't have that bulky battery, and then you can't see it when you're holding them. Or you can't see it from the camera, but it's so much lighter. This thing is just super light. You throw it in your pocket, you barely even feel it. Because it's thinner and flatter, it slips right in and out of your pocket without any resistance. This is a super pocketable device. So if I had to buy just one, it's the 2000 because it's super cheap. It's the best value, and it has the benefits that the 3000 model has. Although it doesn't have as good of a screen as the 3000. But this has been my main player device, just because I bought it damaged. So I didn't really care what happens with it. Shell's already beat up, so I've been throwing it in my pocket. There's no damage on the screen, so I haven't had to worry about anything like that. I finished God of War, Chains of Olympus on here. Started Final Fantasy Dissidia on here, and I also started Castlevania Nocturne. Nocturne's the show. Castlevania Dracula X, which is what Nocturne is based off of, on here as well. So this has gotten a lot of use. This out of all my PSPs, this is the one that's actually gotten the most use, because it's the one that I take around with me. Moving on, we have my PSP 3000s. So this one is one of my pride and joys right here. It has this little chow here that I got with a friend. This is a PSP 3000. I also had to replace the battery back here, or battery cover, because it didn't stay on. I do have the original battery cover, it just didn't stay clicked in. But it's this white and blue mashup that is a Japan exclusive colorway. And I just think it's gorgeous. I bought it, it was 70 bucks, which was really cheap. I got it on auction again at eBay, which is kind of how I end up with a lot of these, is that I see it at auction that's really cheap, and then I just swoop on it in the last minute. It does have a little bit of screen damage that you can't see on camera. That's up here. There's a little bit of scratching here, so it's not ideal to play on because of that. But this is mostly like my display piece, just because it's not something that I can get here in the US, and because when people see it, they're like, oh my god, that's really cute, that's really nice, I really like that color. It's just gorgeous. I bought this console because it's pretty. That's really the only reason. Now moving on, we have kind of a special case. Normally I don't go out of my way to get duplicates. It usually just kind of happens, or like I usually will buy a special version, or buy a normal version of that console and then buy a duplicate of it that's special in some way, like the special edition 2DS XL that I have. I just smacked my mic again. But anyways, this one was an accident. I paid $90 in total, or not 90, I think it was like 95 in total for this console. It came in box with all of its accessories, and it came with 6 games from Japan. It was a Japanese console, and it's, once again, I just put money on it because I was like, it's like at $90 right now. I'll put like 99, and we'll see what happens. And then someone tried to swoop in at like 95, or I said 95 earlier. Yeah, I think I paid 99. They tried to swoop in at 95, and then I already bid 99, so I was fine. So it was super cheap. Like if I include the cost of all those games, this is probably like only like 60 bucks for, no, not if I include the cost of the games, it's probably much cheaper than that. It's probably like $40 for the actual console, and then $90 for the console and the games, which is a crazy deal. So I couldn't miss up on it, and that's why I have this duplicate right here. But unlike my PSP 3000 I already had, the screen in this one is in perfect condition. So I'm tempted to start using this as my player. The issue is I don't want to bring this around and potentially scratch it up and scrape it, because I have the box. And the box is, it's difficult for me to want to hurt a console or possibly damage a console if I have the box and everything, and it's like basically all fully complete in box and whatever. It came with the original PSP sleeve and everything. So I'm a little torn. I'm probably still going to be using my PSP 2000, especially after I shell swap it, because then it'll just be a good looking console that I can bring around everywhere with me. So last in my consoles here is the PSP, or PS Vita. This is my third PS Vita, which is going to sound crazy, but it's a similar story to everything else here. So I bought 2 on accident. It was one auction. It was at $200 for 2 PS Vitas, and I just put down one. I just was like, all right, sure. I think when I first initially bid, I think it was at 180. I was like, oh, I'll bet 200, and then it ended up finishing out at 200. So I had 2 PS Vitas that I'd gotten for $100 each. And if you know anything about the cost of PS Vitas, that's a pretty good deal. So I ended up holding on to one of them. I sold one, and I was like, well, I'll sell this for like $95, and I'll still have made a profit. And then I ended up doing something similar with the other PS Vita as well. So I sold that one because I ended up winning this one on accident from an auction for, I think, $140. So both of those were in damaged condition. They were not great. They both worked perfectly fine, but they had scrapes on them, and then there was a smudge on the screen on one of them. There was a little bit of like nail polish, pink glittery nail polish I couldn't get off. This is nothing like that. This is in perfect condition. It's this gorgeous red color that I just love. It's like a hot rod. Oh my god, I just love this console so much. So this is going to become my main PS Vita because I don't have my other PS Vita because I sold it. I haven't played anything on here yet, actually. Everything that I played on that other PS Vita. I played Gravity Rush. I was going to play Metal Gear Solid Peace Walker on there because if you mod your Vita, you can have double stick controls on some PlayStation Portable games. So that's what the goal of this one here is, just for basically like Peace Walker, Kingdom Hearts, etc. All those PSP games that have 2 sticks, GTA. I'm going to play them on here. In addition, I plan to play Persona 4 Golden on here because I haven't played Persona 4 Golden yet. I've played Persona 5, and I've played Persona 3, but I haven't played Persona 4. So I plan on playing that on here, along with the Metal Gear Solid, Final Fantasy X remake on here, or each HD, on here as well. So that's that. Yeah, that's this last console here. that wraps it up for me. If you guys have any questions or comments, or want to tell your own stories about collecting or your own consoles as a kid, feel free to do that in the comments. I love reading it and I love responding. This is my first video back to YouTube, so I apologize for the kind of low quality of it. But I'm just kind of getting back in the swing of things, so please forgive me for that. You're probably going to get some higher quality content in the future. With that, thanks. Please leave a like and subscribe if you liked the video, and I will see you guys later.